So this is Moses. Does that look like
with his uncle?
Does that look like what you see on Easter when they show the movie every Easter? He has an aunt.
Them
He's
people
black.
is white in that movie.
Habibi Fahodie, brothers and sisters. This is Bamandeli, again with my beautiful wife Llaila. And on this video, we'll be discussing something that has been in demand from a number of our commenters and subscribers. And that's an insight into some of the books that we've read that have influenced us on our spiritual journey. And so we'll be just overviewing just some of the books because we have so many more. But when we made our transition to the motherland, we had to leave some behind, but hopefully we can get those mailed to us. So this is just a small sample of some of the books that have had a huge impact on us, and we hope that you all can also purchase and read for your own edification. So we're just going to dive right in. The first book I have in my hand is from one of the great master teachers who we think isn't talked about enough, but is one of the great teachers of our age, and that's Dr. Mwalimu Baruti. And his book here is called Mentacide. And this is a very foundational book, we feel, for African Centered people, because in this book he talks about just how much damage the European has done to the African mind in terms of inflicting what he calls mentacide, which is a term he borrowed from one of our ancestors, Bobby Wright. And the idea is that in a menticidal situation, the brain of the African is hollowed out and it's replaced with the European mind. So, and out of that menticidal state, you enact European traditions, rituals, ways of thinking.
So you look African, you look black, but you are acting as a strictly European.
Right. And the thing about Baruti is he's such a great teacher, and his videos are even available on YouTube. Him and his wife, they run an institute called the Aquabin Institute. And in this institute, they teach African Centered thought. And he really digs in not just about how menticide affects us on the level of individual, but how it affects our families, how it prevents us from being complementary pairs in our relationships. And he has books on the kind of sexual terrorism that abounds within African communities. And I've quoted him in other videos. But just to give you an idea of what this table of contents is, self-serving spirituality, Nana John Henrik Clark, independently African, the gender-confused voice of African manhood, lies, lies, and more lies. So this is something that we feel should be in the arsenal of every African-centered person, because once you unlock the keys to defeat menticide, that's when your journey towards African-centeredness begins. So Mentacide by Mwalimu Baruti, excellent book. All right, what's next?
Next two books are by the
instigator,
the amazing Barashango.
Yes. So Barashango, as we may have stated in other videos, he's just a revered ancestor for my wife and I. And he's wrote a 2-volume book. And this can be used for practical use in our lives. And it's called African People and European Holidays, a Mental Genocide. And Barashango, he calls himself a reverend, but really he's a warrior. And he's a warrior because he holds no punches when it comes to the kind of spiritual colonization that African people have underwent at the hands of Europeans worldwide. And he really encourages us to look at history and apply that history to how we interpret religion. So it was through Barashango that we discovered that Jesus Christ is named Yeshua ben Yosef. And it is also through Barashango that we discovered that all of the European holidays like Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving, these are all
furthering their culture,
to further European culture. So what Barashango is doing, I think, for African people is he's teaching us how to be more sovereign and teaching us how to be more independent in the ways we move and the way we think. And so Barashango, he's also an excellent historian. So some of the table of content titles he has is Ancient African Scientists Bring Civilization to the British Isles, Wars and Rumor of Wars, The Maroon Wars, the American Revolution, the Protestant Reformation, and the African slave trade. So
many good books, and I can guarantee you,
yes.
Barashango knows the Bible better than your
yes.
preacher does.
Watch his video on Bible study,
yes.
and you will just be blown away. You will read the Bible like you've never read it before, on a different level.
And he does so much research. He's researched so much. Like he has dates. It's just so much research that he's done.
Yes.
So if you are a Christian, I would definitely advise you to look into Barashango, because he will have you looking at Christianity completely different.
And he will force you to discard religion in favor of spirituality, true spirituality. Because I know that's a kind of a meme these days. People say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Well, when you read Barashango, you will understand that spirituality is beyond just lighting incense. It's going to war against your enemies. And that's what Barashango does for us. So African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide, excellent book. And make sure you get both volumes. It's a really good read. All right, what's next?
The next book is
this is
ISIS Papers.
You can go on that.
So Frances Cress Welsing is just one of our most revered ancestors. Like, she is just she's so knowledgeable. She's a psychologist, right?
A
psychiatrist, and she just has done so much work when it comes to dissecting and like really delving into the psychology of white people and Eurasians. And we talked about her in that what video was that? The culture must die video. We talked about her briefly.
Celebrity culture must die.
She kind of delves into where white people came from,
their fear of genetic annihilation,
right? And how they use symbols through sports. Like, it's so good.
Right. She has an excellent chapter on drinks. So Frances, cigars, like all of these kind of phallic symbols, they're representative of race. So for example, she says, like, you notice how in sports games, whenever there's a big ball, the ball is brown or black, and whenever it's a small ball, it's white.
That's their subconscious.
Right, so football, basketball, big ball, baseball, golf, small ball, and they're white. Or she talks about like drinks. So she says drinks are representative of the genetic material of people. So when white people drink like rum or they drink coffee, that's them symbolically showing that they want to intake black genetic material because they suffer from a genetic deficiency. And when we drink white liquid, that's representative of white genetic material. So she shows how beyond just the politics of white supremacy, how white supremacy penetrates us on the psychological level, and how becoming free means decoding that psychological attack.
You have to know what you're dealing with. And that's why we can confidently say the things we say about Europeans, Eurasians, is because we've done the research and we can kind of confidently make analysis on the things. When we see the things that they do, we see the things that they eat, we see the things that the sports they enjoy, we see the media that they always put in their movies. They're always smoking black cigars. Like, so she just gives you guns. She talks about guns and the symbolism of guns. Like it's so good. And this is imperative. This is very imperative to understanding who you're dealing with when we talk about white people.
And Dr. Welsing, she gave us one of the quotes that we quote often. We even used it in a picture in our home. And the quote is, stabilized union between the African male and female means the eventual end to white supremacy. So like that pretty much captures what our page is about. It's our union trying to accelerate the end of white supremacy. And we got Frances Cress Welsing to thank for that insight.
Here's another
look at this
image.
It's very diagrammatic. Like she shows you. She doesn't just speak truth, she shows you on the level of image. And that's very important because America is an image-based society.
Right. And she worked for she was a teacher at Howard and was actually fired because of this book, or because of one of the excerpts from these books. So it's imperative that you read this. This isn't optional. This is mandatory. That's mandatory.
It's like a textbook.
Right. So. Next book is The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden.
Now this, I'm still in the process. Now this is a book I'm sure for the Christians out there, or even for the non-Christians, just people who grew up in the Christian church.
Right.
When you read this book, you will be asking yourself,
How?
Why was this never mentioned at any Sunday service, any Sunday school, any church retreat, any revival meeting? These are what are called the lost books of the Bible. So these are the books of the Bible that weren't included in the King James Version. They're sometimes called the apocryphal books of the Bible. And included in this book is things like the sequel to the Garden of Eden. So the Garden of Eden, that
not
we
even
read,
the sequel, just the rest of the
the
story.
second book of the Garden of Eden.
The story wasn't complete in the Bible.
Also included in here is the childhood of Yeshua ben Yosef, also known as Jesus Christ. Notice in the Bible, Christ is born in a manger, and then shortly afterwards, he's an adult. He just skips adolescence. He has no, and the things that happen in the childhood of Christ are very interesting.
Yeah,
so, for example, it's one story, and I don't even understand it, but it's just worth thinking about. It's one story in here about how Jesus, I'll just say Jesus just for clarity's sake, Yeshua, he's walking through a town as a child, and another child runs into him and brushes him on the shoulder, and Jesus strikes him dead. Why? That's an interesting story. It's another story in here that when Jesus was a child, he was charged with or alleged to have thrown someone off a roof. Like these are things like we don't hear about. Or they in the second book of Genesis, Adam and Eve, after they were driven from the Garden of Eden, they were forced to live in caves.
Who does that sound like?
And not only were they forced to live in caves, as they were coming out of the cave, when Adam saw the light of the sun, he was struck with fear and terror because he thought the sun was out to get him.
Who does that sound like?
Then in the story of Adam and Eve, there's a point where Adam and Eve try to commit suicide. They jump off a rock and they almost die, but they don't die. Like, these are all stories that complicate the kind of simplistic narrative that we get from Sunday service.
Exactly.
And I think anybody who wants to be seriously kind of committed to biblical literacy, not just reciting verses, but historical biblical literacy.
Because it's a history book. The Bible is a history book.
It's a history book. It's a sacred history, though. It's a sacred history because through our sacred history, we understand the culture of a people.
Right.
And also, another beautiful thing about this book is all of the illustrations. There's no white Jesus in this book.
White Jesus.
So I want to see if I can find.
Look, that was a good one.
Yes, this is a picture of the Red Sea swallowing up the army of Pharaoh after the Israelites passed through.
When he got an unk on too.
So this is Moses. Does that look like
with his unk on?
Does that look like what you see on Easter when they show the movie every Easter? He has an unk.
Them
He's
people
black.
is white in that movie.
So this book is so full of here's Jesus on the cross. Black. Just like he was in real life. Yeshua ben Yosef.
You mean he wasn't white?
No. So we need to open ourselves up to these apocryphal books. And if anybody, if you're talking to a Christian and you mention these books and they say, well, that's illegitimate, they're telling you that they're not really interested in knowing the Creator.
They're not.
Because anybody who's interested in knowing the Creator,
they want to know it all.
Is going to eat up anything that's speaking about the Creator because that's how deep their commitment is to knowing them. So when I read this, I don't ask, can this be proven? I'm asking, is what's written here, does this align what I know about the essence of the Creator based off of other traditions that preceded this in Kemet?
Right.
That's
based off of his character.
Based off of his character. So the lost books of the Bible, the forgotten books of Eden, it's an excellent book. Find it preferably on a black owned or African owned site. But this is essential reading for true biblical literacy.
Yes.
All right.
Very good.
Oh yes.
Yurugu.
The enemy.
Yeah.
But not the author, but the representation.
The representation
of the cover. Yeah.
So
this is from our great master teacher, Mama Marimba Ani. And Marimba Ani, and this is a very academic book, but it's necessary to read because in this book you will have an unvarnished, undiluted picture of who the enemy is. Not just in terms of what the enemy has done historically, but who the enemy is on a fundamental molecular level. So one of the foundational concepts, ancestral level. So one of the fundamental concepts that Dr. Ani talks about in this book is the idea of the Asili. And the Asili is just the building blocks of a people. And she has also, just like Francis, and this is something master teachers do, she has illustration images to show what the white asili consists of and how that compares to the black asili. And then she also breaks it down, these two concepts of the utama rojo and the utama wazo. That's the cultural logic and the cultural spirit. The utama rojo is the spirit, and the utama wazo is the logic. So it's like this combination of the Yurugu spirit and logic creates this kind of savage mentality that is very invasive, very aggressive, very exploitative, hostile to any type of difference.
Yes.
They want to wipe out
women, children,
right,
even the ones that look like them.
Right. So like, for example, she says the way Europeans are taught to think defines the universe for the use of European power over others. And then she says they build institutions based on their utama wazo, which teach the rest of us to think according to their rules. So this is a book that it's like a textbook, just like the ISIS papers.
Yeah.
It's very thick. It may take some time to get through, but you won't regret going through it, because after you finish this book, you'll be able to look at your enemy and you'll have no doubt about who they are.
Yeah, it will be very easy to identify.
Yes, because she goes through this with a fine-tooth comb, and it's like she's like an anthropologist on 100. You know, like she doesn't really leave any stone unturned. So this is Yurugu, an African Centered critique of European thought by Dr. Marimba Ani.
Dr. Llaila, African Holistic Health. Such an imperative book. This is what the book we talked about when we were saying how we changed our diet and we started changing the way we eat and what we consume. So not only does he talk about food in this book, he also talks about culture, and he marries the two. He makes it. He gives you the knowledge to be able to identify why we do things with food. Yeah. So he talks about sugar. He talks about fruits and vegetables. He gives you recipes in this book on how to eat. He talks about what white sugar is. He says white sugar is sweet, delicious, good tasting, and it's a dangerous concentrated sweetener. So he dissects deeply into what sugar does to us mentally, like, and what it does to our bodies. Like, because we think, oh, sugar's not bad for you because it makes you hyper, and then you have a sugar rush, and then you fall. Like, no, it's deeper than that. Like, sugar is a drug, and they give it to you, and they put it in everything, and they bleach everything. Oh yeah, look what it says: white junk foods are killing America. Yeah.
And for Dr. Afrika, his definition of drug is anytime you isolate something. So you can have sugar cane and eat the sugar cane, it's not a drug.
It's not a drug.
Once you take the sugar out,
it's
that's
extracted,
when it becomes a drug.
Right. He talks about worms, how you get worms. He talks about astrology. One thing that I was like mind blown when I read this book was that he talked about how women having menstrual cycles was not was a foreign thing in ancient Kemet societies. Women did not menstruate because they weren't oppressed. He talked about how they did a study where animals that were in the wild, that weren't in cages and weren't held captive, didn't menstruate. But once you put them in a zoo or you put them in a confined space, now they start to menstruate. And he talks about how when we became dominated by another power, that's when we started to menstruate. He talked about when we were in captivity. And so it was just mind-blowing to read that. And he just talks about so many things that we think are normal. He talks about sex, how we treat sex, things that we are literally think that are very normal in America. He dissects them and he explains how they're not.
And one of the things I really admire about Llaila Afrika, Dr. Afrika, is he's the true embodiment of what's called a polymath. Meaning he doesn't engage in that European idea of you have to break things, you have to be like a specialist in this one field. And so if you're like an astrologer, you can only talk about the stars. He doesn't confine himself to anything. He says, I'm gonna talk about the stars, I'm gonna talk about history, I'm gonna talk about sexuality, I'm gonna talk about anatomy. I'm gonna talk about anatomy, I'm gonna talk about colors. He talks about color theory.
He does.
So he's a true genius in the pure sense of the word. He has a God mind. And I think this is one of those ancestors that we have to continually kind of dip from his well of knowledge, because he has that kind of energy that really just is essential, you know, for African people to really understand the reality in which they live and have the weapons to fight against it.
Exactly. And he talks here about the difference between black and white races. So he talks about the anatomy. So this side is the black side, this is the white side. And you see how he has a grid showing you the differences. This is for people who have all these arguments that we're all the same.
Under the skin.
He gives, you read this book, we won't walk away saying we're all the same.
Right.
Yeah, and he talks about our sleep patterns being different. He just talks about so much. And he also, like he said, all great teachers, they give you diagrams and pictures to kind of reinforce what they're saying. So this is a very imperative book to have.
Yeah,
like,
another mandatory, not optional.
Not optional at all.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let you talk about this one. This is another Dr. Afrika book, and I'm gonna let my husband talk about this one.
Yes, and this goes to a point that we really believe, which is African centeredness is child centeredness.
It is.
So whenever you're African centered, you have to prioritize the health and welfare of the child. So this is a book again by Dr. Afrika, and it's called Handbook for Raising Black Children, a comprehensive holistic guide. And he just goes through several things. Not just things that are good for raising children, but he also talks about how we can be better parents, how we can be better adults among each other. So one of the favorite parts in this book for me is he talks about brotherhoods and sisterhoods, and how we construct brotherhood and sisterhood interferes with our ability to be loving, attentive mothers and fathers, and how we have to kind of break out of that cycle and if we wish to raise healthy, whole black children.
Right.
So, and other things he talked about is how to discipline your children, sex issues, natural holistic health remedies, how to prevent your child from being dominated by peer groups instead of the parents. So and it follows from infancy all the way into adolescence and early adulthood. So this is something, again, I'm still in the process of reading this, but I just want to see if I can find a sample. Oh, again, with the diagrams, he has diagrams in here. So let me see, I just saw it. So these are about fevers, like just home remedies. Like this is the practical information that we need.
The information our ancestors used to use before we encountered Europeans.
Right, and he even has recipes in here. So for people who want to think of a way to kind of have that healthy diet, that's also in here. So this is a great book, again, for those parents out there who want to raise children to be sovereign and not to be dependent and not to be self-hating, but to be self-affirming. Right. So this is Llaila Afrika, Handbook for Raising Black Children, a comprehensive holistic guide. These are the last two
books that we have. There you go.
And this is a teacher. I don't know if he's as well known as he should be, but he's Muata Ashby. He's a Kemetic scholar, and he has so many books. Like he has, I think, at least like 30 books. But I have another one of his. But these are the two that I want to promote. This one is called Sacred Sexuality, Ancient Egyptian Tantric Yoga. And in this book, he really talks about the importance of what he calls sex sublimation. And for if we understand the Kemetic sciences, there are seven energy centers in the human body. And those lower regions, those are the regions which are very carnal. They control our appetite. And Ashby communicates that unless we practice sex sublimation, meaning unless we are able to take that sexual energy and sublimate it, meaning suppress it in favor of more enlightened spiritual energy, then we'll constantly be be in a situation where our life force is being drained.
Yeah, and we're going to make a video where we talk about being out of our culture sexually, which is very important to African people. But yes, this book is very imperative when it comes to talking on that.
So this his other book is called The African Origins of African Civilization, Religion, Yoga, Mysticism, and Ethics Philosophy. And this goes to what I was talking about with the lost books of the Bible, how all the religious systems come out of ancient Kemet, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of them. And he does it in a very systematic way, showing you just how long the civilizations have lasted and also how they're all in debt to ancient Kemet. And once you understand that, you won't be as captive to the kind of religious narrative. And not to say that you won't appreciate it, but you'll see it for what it is. You won't see it as the entirety. And that's one of the things that Ashby does very well, is he gives you the proper historical and a lot of esoteric knowledge to complement that religious knowledge that really kind of simplifies what the universe is about. So This is another book. Again, that's a short summary, but I really advise people just look it up and read it, because this is valuable information for spiritual enlightenment. The African Origins by Muata Ashby. All right. So I think that completes all of them.
Yeah.
So those are some of the books. Again, we might do some more once I get the books from America, but as of right now, these are just some of the favorites that we have with us. We urge people to understand that learning is inseparable from spiritual growth. So if you're not learning every day, whether it's a chapter, a paragraph, or just even a sentence, but make sure you're putting information in your mind that is working towards your edification, because you know there's abundance of stuff out there trying to tear us down. So we really hope that this was of some benefit to our viewers. So
thank
do you have
guys
anything to share?
No. Thank you guys so much for watching.
All right.
And we will see you in our next video.
See you on the next time. Peace.
Bye.